our morning show studios today, we have Angie Coonan, who is Executive Director of the Richland Hospital Foundation, and pleased to have Dr. Krista Loomy in the studio with us as well. We're talking about a donation from Grace that has really helped kind of put things in motion and really benefits our community. That's our first focus here today on the morning show. Angie, good morning. Good to have you in the studio with us.
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
The foundation, I know, is really excited to be able to partner with Grace to get this done for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great opportunity. Grace has the opportunity for us to apply for grants for much needed equipment for our small rural hospital, and it helps with early cancer detection, and we're super excited to have this piece of equipment, and Dr. Loomy is going to talk a little bit about what this equipment does, but the fact that it's staying right here in our community in this partnership with Grace and the Richland Hospital and Clinics, it's truly a blessing for us.
I know you've partnered with Grace before, but it's been a little while since we've done something specific, isn't it?
Correct. And it's this. It's called a gastroscope, and if I've said it wrong, I'm sure Dr. Loomy will let me know. But yes, that is a specific piece of equipment to help with early cancer detection. And again, it's just phenomenal that we have this ability in our small community for patients to come in and have this detection done and help with early prognosis.
Did you have like a list of things that possibly that you could use or need at the hospital?
Each year we have equipment that comes up that we need, and there's only so much funds to go around, and there's only so much in the budget. And when extra pieces of equipment like this come up, that's when they come to the foundation, the different departments, and ask the foundation to help out either financially through the donations that I receive or through grants. And so I had a grant writer I work with, and I told her I was very interested in applying for this grant and working with Grace, and so we worked together, and again we were awarded it's probably one of the biggest grants I've received yet here in my career at the hospital. So I'm very proud of this, and I'm super excited that it gets to stay right here, and we have physicians that can use it and work with our community, and it all came from donations. So when I raise funds, I purchase equipment, I give out scholarships. It stays right here in the community, and this partnership with Grace, and Grace willing to give it to us to help support this equipment has been pretty cool.
It is amazing because it's not, Grace helps a lot of patients, individual patients. This is going to help potentially many patients, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Dr. Loomy in to kind of get the scoop on the scope. So, good morning, Dr. Loomy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great, thanks. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
When you received news that you were going to be able to receive this, I'm guessing you're excited.
Absolutely. Being able to detect cancer early is one of the great breakthroughs in medicine. Rather than treat it once it's a big problem, to be able to find it early or even find precancerous growths and treat them to prevent cancer. When we talk about Grace's mission, the greater Richland area cancer elimination, prevention is just a huge piece of that, because if you can prevent it from even happening, it's a lot easier than having to go through the cancer treatments that people might need.
Grace is very unique, but I know you got to be considering yourself fortunate that you live in a community that supports it so much, right?
Absolutely. I've focused most of my career on cancer treatment, evaluation, diagnosis, and to have a community-based program that actually reaches out not only just to patients suffering from cancer, but also reaches out to us as a medical community to say, hey, we'd like to support you in your mission to help make our community healthier. That's just a wonderful thing.
Prevention is the big key, isn't it?
Absolutely. I remember when I was a medical student that I read a Chinese saying that the good doctor treats the disease, but the excellent doctor prevents it from occurring. And that stuck with me even as a medical student, to think about not just putting the Band-Aid on when you get the boo-boo, but not even tripping over the cat in the first place.
But describe this piece of equipment then, and what it means. I'm guessing your ability is so much improved from when you first started practicing medicine, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So a gastroscope is a special long telescope that's very narrow. It's about the size of just about 3/4 of a dime size around. And it allows me to look inside the throat, the esophagus, the swallowing tube, down into the stomach. And for us surgeons, the stomach is that stretchy bag where food goes after we swallow instead of your whole belly. So I can look inside the stomach, and then after our stomach, we have 15 to 20 feet of small intestine. And I can see about the first 8 to 12 inches of that small intestine. Now, most stomach cancer, which although it's not as widespread in America as it is in Asia, gastric cancer or stomach cancer is the #1 killer there because of the prevalence of smoked and pickled foods and the preservatives that are used traditionally in that culture. Here in America, however, we have seen that stomach cancer and esophagus cancer have risen dramatically over the last 20 to 30 years, primarily because of increasing obesity. Now you're going to say, well, how can being bigger increase cancer? Well, there's actually many mechanisms. With stomach cancer and esophagus cancer, excess damage to tissue. And cancers can arise anywhere tissue is damaged, whether it's chronic irritation on your skin from the sun or from you picking at something, or in your liver, if liver cells are damaged and then try to heal and repair, that increased turnover of cells gives an opportunity for an error to be made in those cells. Think about if you took a piece of paper that had something written on it and you wanted to make a Xerox copy of it. Oh, I guess that dates me saying Xerox.
Mimeograph.
Yeah, that's even worse, right?
Yes, it is.
So if you take that copy and you make a copy of it, and then you take that copy and make another copy of it, after about 10, 15, 100 times, it's going to be hard to read what you originally started with because tiny little errors accumulate. And it's the same thing with our cells. When our cells grow and divide, tiny little errors can occur in the basic instructions of a cell called the nucleus that has the DNA, the basic building blocks of how our cell is supposed to function. And if little errors accumulate in critical points, then it can lose control about how that cell grows and divides. Now, all of our cells have seasons, just like we have seasons of the year. Cells have seasons. They have spring, where everything gets ready and it starts to get all ready for growth. Summer, where things flower and start to bloom. Fall, where you harvest, where cells would divide from 1 into 2, duplicating themselves. And then there's winter, when cells rest. They just sit and are quiet. A cancer breaks that timing mechanism of cell division so that instead of there being spring, summer, fall, winter, it's always spring and summer. You just skip fall and winter and you just grow, divide, grow, divide, grow, divide. And eventually a mass of cells develops that is uncontrollably growing. And as they grow and divide themselves further, they can acquire even more errors in how they are supposed to behave. And they don't behave anything like the normal tissue anymore. They may lose the ability to stick together in one clump, break off and go elsewhere in the body. And that's when cancer spreads.
I see. With the new equipment, I'm guessing the picture has to be really, really clear. I mean, you can kind of really focus in, can't you?
Yeah, and we're really excited to get this new scope because it is an advance in the technology. All of our telescopes are incredibly detailed. They let me see something blown up almost 10 times normal when I look at the inner lining. So I can see little variations in color, texture, whether there's swelling, whether there's new blood vessels growing, lots of things that I can see. And we also have what's called narrow band imaging. That's a fancy way to say we use a green light instead of white light. And that special green light can show us precancerous or even cancerous areas that look different under that green light rather than the natural light that we see. And that can help us guide where to take a biopsy of something that looks not quite normal.
Early prevention, those are the key words, right?
Oh, absolutely. And something that is really interesting about esophagus and stomach cancer is that because those areas are pretty big and a lot of stuff passes through them, a cancer has to grow to pretty good size before it starts to close off the opening and cause blockage of food or to bleed. Those are the two ways that most stomach and esophageal cancers show up, is that they either bleed or they cause blockage. Now, a lot of people think that heartburn is just an annoying thing. And what heartburn is, I always love it when people come in my office and they say, I have heartburn. I'm like, what do you mean by that? If I didn't know what heartburn was, what would you tell me you experience? For most people, it means that burning feeling when acid comes from your stomach back up into your esophagus because you had too much to eat or for some other reason. But what most people don't know is that acid backing up into the upper part of the stomach and the esophagus doesn't belong there. And the esophagus lining has no protection against acid. So that acid will chew away at the inner lining, again stimulating that injury, repair, regrowth mechanism that over a long period of time can develop a cancer. So a lot of people think heartburn is just an annoying thing, and you might just take an antacid. But if that damage goes on for years and years, you can develop precancerous changes, which we can see, and that's called Barrett's esophagus. And that's where the esophagus lining is so irritated that it changes itself into intestinal or stomach lining to prevent acid from damaging it. But that lining doesn't belong there, and it can devolve and become cancerous. So with the gastroscope, when I see someone who has maybe they've had heartburn on and off for years, but now it's all the time, and the antacids they're taking over the counter don't control it anymore, I would take a telescope and look to make sure that something isn't abnormal or changed that might need treatment for that. And in that is the ability to prevent cancer. So it has both two purposes. That gastroscope allows me to look at the lining to diagnose what's going on, why are you feeling that pain? And also, if I see precancerous changes, I can biopsy them and then put people on a regimen to prevent further damage to the esophagus and prevent esophagus cancer.
We hear a lot about reflux. A lot of us suffer from that. And, not always does it have to do with diet, but a lot of times it does, doesn't it?
It can. Our stomach is a dynamic organ. It doesn't just store things. It grinds it up into a paste and pours in acid, digestive enzymes, and then lets it out into the small intestine a little bit at a time. If you make your stomach too full, things will back up into your esophagus. It doesn't feel so good or taste so good in your mouth.
Thanksgiving.
Yes, the classic example.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. When I ask people if they have what's called early satiety, meaning they get full too fast, I'll often ask them, do you feel like you ate a Thanksgiving meal even though you only had one pancake? Mm-hmm. Of course, you have to judge what the size of the pancake is.
Right, true.
And early satiety is one of those signs that maybe there's something not right. Either there's a blockage of the stomach emptying, there's inflammation, there could be problems with how the muscle of the stomach is functioning. And all of those, again, would be a reason why a family doctor might send someone to me as a surgeon to take a telescope and look and say, what's going on? Why are things different? And I think when we talk about cancer prevention is if something changes in your body, we go along with our life thinking we're going to be 16 forever, and if it changes from when we were 16, we go, I'm getting old. Mm-hmm. But some things, like let's say all of a sudden, you get heartburn if you eat pizza or those hot chilies from Los Amigos or anything else. But all of a sudden now you're getting heartburn if you just have toast in the morning. that means there's something wrong, something different, and it should be investigated, because sometimes those changes can be the earliest sign of a precancerous or cancerous growth that surgeons like me can detect, biopsy with these great new telescopes that we're going to have, and help prevent people from having that growth spread everywhere.
Are there some natural foods that work? Because I've heard about apple cider vinegar, for instance, and things like that.
The great apple cider vinegar.
You know, I mean, do those things really work?
Well, it depends on what you're asking about in terms of working.
Right.
Meaning,
Well,
does it make you feel better?
Cutting
or
down the
does
acid.
it actually prevent and treat acid?
Right.
And the answer is no.
Oh, okay.
There are, the stomach acid you make is about 1,000 times more powerful than most of the acids you can drink. Probably the only exception would be like lemon juice. Lemon juice is about 10 times less powerful than our stomach acid. Apple cider vinegar is about 100 times less powerful than stomach acid. And if you just think about it, if you wanted to reduce acid, drinking an acid generally doesn't help that. Just from a mechanical standpoint. Now, people have looked at whether vinegar has other properties, that it might trigger hormones that help the stomach empty better. And in some people, yes, it might. But that's rare. Most of the time, apple cider vinegar is what we call a placebo, that it helps you feel better. You think you're doing something to treat your acid. But for most people, it doesn't change the fact that that acid is there and chewing on your tissues and making them grow over and over and over again. So I always like to say, when you talk about something working, is it actually treating the problem, or is it making you feel better? Because those are two very distinct things. And I tell people, if you're having bad enough heartburn and acid problems that you need to take apple cider vinegar, it probably needs to be checked out. Now, these days, when I was a young pup surgeon, long time ago, 30-some years ago, we didn't have powerful acid-blocking medicines that go right to the stomach pump that makes acid. We didn't have anything like that. So when I was a young surgeon, we did tons of stomach surgery. We used to cut parts of the stomach out because of persistent ulcers and sores and heartburn. About half the time, about half my operations that I learned were all about stomach surgery. And I can't tell you the last time that I actually had to operate on someone's stomach to treat an ulcer, other than the occasional ulcer popping open because people didn't follow the warning signs. So stomach surgery has kind of gone away from the general surgeon's repertoire because we have these new medicines called proton pump inhibitors. In science, a proton is basically something that an acid has. And proton pump inhibitors go to the pump in the stomach lining that makes acid and shuts it off. That's the inhibitor part. And these medicines are so powerful they can block 95% of stomach acid. So if acid is the problem, turning the acid off can be the solution.
A lot of times, though, we don't want to be on even over-the-counter stuff for a prolonged period of time, though, do we?
Well, not if there is something wrong. And that's why a lot of these medicines over the counter will say do not use more than 14 days unless prescribed by a physician. Because although, for the occasional heartburn, taking one of those is great. But if you're having heartburn every day or it's getting worse and worse, again, that could be a sign there's something more serious happening and you should see your doctor. Now, a lot of people prefer natural remedies. And I always smile just a tiny bit about that because I think to myself, well, rattlesnakes and tornadoes are natural too. So not everything natural is either helpful or beneficial. But in terms of people wanting to be more holistic about their health and do things that they can do without medication or surgery, there's a bunch of them. And most of them have to do with mechanics and simple physics about how your stomach squeezes and empties. For example, if you eat late at night, your intestines and stomach naturally work less at night than they do during the day. It's part of a natural rhythm we all have, that we're meant to be active animals during the day and sleep at night. So our stomachs and intestines are not really primed to empty a big meal late at night. A lot of people say if you have bad heartburn, don't eat after 6 p.m. Have that be your last meal.
At least a couple of hours before bedtime, perhaps, right?
Yeah, so if we look at each other, we're sitting here, our stomachs are down here in our belly, and our esophagus is up in our chest. So just by gravity, anything you eat is going to sit down in your stomach and stay down. But what happens when you lay down? All of a sudden, your stomach and your esophagus are on the same level. And so it's a lot easier for stuff to come up from your stomach into your esophagus when you're lying down. So that brings up the second thing that you can do, which is to elevate your head of your bed. Now, I'm not talking about bending your bed at an angle, but rather putting blocks on the head of the bed to put your entire bed at just a tiny slant, and usually like 6-inch blocks or 4-inch blocks is sufficient to use gravity to help keep things in your stomach and not in your esophagus at night. So that's something else you can do. You could try sleeping on pillows, but most of us wake up off the pillows.
Off the pillows. Yeah, there are wedges you can buy too, you know.
Yes, and those are quite effective unless you just slide down them. Some people with such bad heartburn even resort to sleeping in a recliner. Oh, sure. So that they don't lay down at night. We know that fatty foods, things like fried, greasy, high-fat foods like rich desserts like cheesecake, all that fat makes your stomach slow down and slow its emptying. So eating things that are high in fat also will increase heartburn. And additionally, our esophagus has a little muscle at the end of it, so that after we swallow and things go through that muscle down into the stomach, it stays down there, doesn't come back up. There are foods that have chemicals in them, natural chemicals, that can weaken that muscle. And as I say these, everybody at home is going to say, oh yeah, I get heartburn when I have chocolate, mint, tomato, acid. All of those can weaken that muscle and allow stuff to come up more easily. So avoiding that chocolate mint dessert that's high fat can help you prevent heartburn.
Darn.
No, just eat it for breakfast.
Oh, there you go. But it's almost like a flap on the stomach, right? Or a door that kind of stays ajar. Then,
it's actually a round muscle that when you start to swallow naturally loosens, so there's no blockage to the passage of food down into the stomach. And then when you're done swallowing, it resumes its normal tight tone. Some people naturally have just a weaker muscle there, so may be prone to heartburn in their teens or 20s. Other people, that muscle just sits there open all the time. And that can be a problem too for excess acid production. The other thing that can cause a lot of heartburn is what's called a hiatal hernia. Okay, a lot of people hear those words. I have no idea what it is. So our stomach is supposed to be down below our diaphragm, that big muscle that divides our chest from our belly. And there's a little opening in the diaphragm for the esophagus to go through. Good, so that food can get from your mouth down to the belly. But what can happen over time? For women, this can be related to pregnancy and childbirth, is that opening can get stretched with time. In all of us, if we carry more, what I love to say is fluff on our belly, that increased fluff on our belly, whether it's on the outside or the inside of our belly, increases pressure in the belly as well and can stretch that opening. For men and for women, heavy, hard work, heavy lifting, pushing, pulling, weightlifters, people who work in heavy labor, construction, often put increased pressure inside their abdomen. Or things that increase pressure, like straining to move your bowels or straining to pass your water. All of those can also stretch that opening. And if that opening stretches enough, then the stomach with increased pressure can slide up through that opening into the chest a little bit, and it might slide up and down over time. Well, remember there's a muscle at the end of the esophagus, and that normally fits right at the diaphragm, and those two pinch together. Well, if your stomach slides up in your chest a little bit, there's no more barrier to it going north. Hiatal hernias can be very small and cause severe symptoms, or very large and cause no symptoms. Everybody is different.
Is that a surgery as well that's regularly performed then?
This gets me back to the 1990s,
right,
when I did hundreds, probably thousands of surgeries to pull the stomach back down into the belly, tighten up that diaphragm muscle, and make a new one-way flap valve so that things go down but don't come back up. And that is effective for persistent heartburn that doesn't respond to medications. But it brings its own set of problems because now things go down in the stomach but don't necessarily come back easy up. Think about that big turkey dinner. And if you feel too full, or if you have too much soda pop that's got air in it and you feel too full, what can you do? You can belch. That can be impaired after this type of surgery. So then if your stomach is too full, it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it causes sometimes other symptoms too, like you might be thinking you're having a heart attack, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I can't tell you how many people I see who think that they're having a heart attack and what they're actually having is acid damage on their esophagus or in their stomach. You know, when God made us, there was a little defect in the mechanics, which is that we have 8 organs that only have one nerve to talk to the brain and say there's trouble. And those organs include your heart, the covering of the heart, the pericardium, the esophagus, the stomach, first part of the small intestine, the duodenum, the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. All of those have one nerve called the vagus nerve that sends pain signal. And so when we have any of those organs complaining, we feel it right here, kind of from our lower breastbone to the mid-chest and off to the side a little bit. And so any of those organs can have the same symptoms. That's why when you come in and say you have pain here, we think about your heart, we think about your esophagus, we think about your liver, pancreas, gallbladder. I can't tell you how many people with bad gallbladder attacks think they're having a heart attack. Or vice versa. People who think it's just their gallbladder and it turns out, they're having heart issues. And that's why you should see your doctor and say, hey, I'm having these problems. And make sure when you go, don't use the word heartburn. Don't use the word gallbladder attack. Instead, just describe what you're feeling. How does it feel? When does it come on? When does it go away? What makes it better or worse? If you had to tell a friend what it felt like, what kind of words would you use? Giving your doctor that information is so much more helpful. Because if Angie says to me, I have heartburn, and I say, oh, you have heartburn. Have you taken an acid-blocking medicine? She says, yeah, it doesn't help at all. It's still getting worse, especially if I'm outdoors doing gardening. And as a doctor, I think, oh, wait a minute, gardening, that's not the stomach. That you may actually be having heart problems when you think you're having heartburn. And if you come in and say to the doctor, I have heartburn, they're going to give you an acid-blocking medicine. That does nothing for your real heart.
The other thing we should not do is, it's easy to go to Google and,
and Dr. Google.
Dr. Google, and then all of a sudden you're freaking out thinking, I'm not,
dying.
I'm not going to make it here.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Google's dangerous. Now, Dr. Google can be helpful for you to get information about a condition you've been diagnosed with.
Sure.
Or to start thinking, could this be something I should worry about? However, it depends on your level of worry. People who are bad worriers are, like you said, going to drive themselves crazy and think that the end of the world is here. Yeah. There's such a thing as too much information because our human brains aren't good at dealing with too much information. Think about when you have your kids all yammering at the same time. You can't hear any of it because there's too much noise. Similarly, too much information can just confuse you. Seeing a physician or a nurse practitioner who can actually explain things to you in simple terms is often much better than going to Dr. Google.
No doubt. Great to have Dr. Loomy in the studio and Angie Coonan. We're going to talk more about the Richland Hospital Foundation and again, the generous donation from Grace when the morning show continues. Welcome back to our morning show. Fascinating conversation going on today as Dr. Krista Loomy is in the studio with us. Angie Coonan, Executive Director of the Richland Hospital Foundation, is in with us as well. And again, some really good conversation here this morning.
Yeah,
Angie?
I think we could go on and on about all the knowledge Dr. Loomy has and share with our community.
No doubt. Very, very fortunate to have the staff that you have at the hospital.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a blessing indeed. As she was talking, I was sitting there thinking, wow, all this knowledge we have in our small town of Richland Center and the other doctors and nurse practitioners that Dr. Loomy works with. It is a blessing, and it's phenomenal that we have that here.
Let's talk about the foundation. You recently had a successful golf outing, didn't you?
Yes, we did. A couple weeks ago, we had it in Spring Green at the House on the Rock. It's one of our major fundraisers, and all those funds stay right here in the community and go help purchase different equipments and award scholarships. Our scholarship application process just ended. We had 27 applications come in, and so the scholarship committee is actively looking over those scholarships, and those are young future doctors, nurses, working in the healthcare field. They don't even have to be doctors or nurses to receive one of our scholarship, but that's all comes in through donations through the community and through our staff at the Richland Hospital and Clinics. The staff combined give over $40,000 out of their paychecks to the foundation to help purchase the equipment like Dr. Loomy was talking about and give out the scholarships, and it all stays right here. Those are our biggest expenses through the foundation. I'm currently always working towards is raising funds is to purchase all the state-of-the-art equipment for our rural hospital and also to give those scholarships out to help fund future healthcare workers because we're going to need them to take care of us down the road. We're, all getting up there, an aging population. We need young people to stay in our community and turn into people like Dr. Loomy to help us hopefully someday find a cure for cancer and all the great things ahead. So that's what our funds at the foundation go towards. They stay right here, and it's raised through our golf event, through our end of the year ask event that we have. Some community members probably get letters from us asking for funds, but that's so that we can afford to put out there and buy these extra pieces of equipment the hospital needs and support scholarships and support small programs that we have within our community. We have one coming up here called Club Scrub, where we're getting middle schoolers and high schoolers to come into the Richland Hospital and Clinics and learn about different practices of medicine and different things that you can do throughout the hospital, either in pharmacy or EVS or health and information systems, HIM. I mean, all important things in the healthcare that you can do. Plus, we have anesthesiologists and we have surgeons, and all show different little scenarios through Club Scrubs to our middle school and high schoolers on August 27th. That's open now for registration, and it's free to just come in and learn about it, and maybe we can get you hooked in healthcare somehow.
Absolutely. The Club Scrub is amazing. I got to participate in it. I felt so honored to be able to meet with those middle schoolers last year and to see the delight on their faces as I talked to them like adults about here's what we do in medicine and here's how it works. And I saw so much shining light in their eyes, and they want to be the future of healthcare, and I'm so grateful we have the foundation in our community supporting that.
Yes.
Homegrown help is best.
You bet. It's amazing, Angie, that, when young people step forward, because a lot of us aging baby boomers, we're going to need them the next few years to take care of us.
Absolutely. I'm thinking ahead to myself, not to age myself, but, I'm over 50 and I'm thinking ahead, like, who's going to be there? There's less and less people going into the healthcare field, and we need to support them, and no better way to start than in our own community. And that can be done by, donating to the foundation and helping us to continually pay it forward.
Right, exactly. I mean, we talk about technology, but we still need the human touch, don't we?
Absolutely. We need the people. We need the people to have the information and look at all the information we learned today, and if Dr. Loomy can pass that on, and there's so much out there, and if we can just keep them right here in our own community, that's what we're striving for.
Dr. Loomy, do you feel that someday there will be a cure for cancer? What is your opinion?
Again, my thought is about prevention. I think that we're going to find ultimately that cancer is related to our immune system. Our immune system knows what's us and what's not us. And I think that many cancers arise because our immune system doesn't recognize that cancer as foreign and not being part of us. I can see that in the future, maybe 10, 15, 30 years from now, that we may not poison cancers or radiate them or cut them out. We may actually just teach our immune system, hey, this thing here, this doesn't belong, go get it. Mm-hmm. And I think that ultimately that's going to be what the future of cancer treatment is actually preventing it from growing and spreading in the first place by training our immune system to work better.
It makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's my personal theory, so we'll see how it all plays out. I hope I'm around long enough to see how the story goes.
We're hard hit in the area, and I mean, what typical cancers do you see?
Like most places in the country, our main cancers are colon cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer. Those are the big four that we see a lot of. And some of them are related to lifestyle issues. If we smoke, we damage our lungs, and the lungs have to continuously repair. That's why smoking is associated with lung cancer. If we get too fluffy, again, there are hormones that stimulate growth and turnover of cells, and obesity, being too heavy for what your body needs, is also a risk factor for all cancers. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing cancers increase across the board and in younger people, because those younger people have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. I see a lot of children these days with significant obesity. Fluff is coming early. Mm-hmm. And multiple decades of that excess fatty tissue, which can send hormone signals, can trigger early cancer. And I think that's partly why we're seeing younger and younger people getting cancer these days.
Skin cancer in our area as well, because we have a lot of people that work outdoors.
Well, yeah, everybody's hard working outside in the farm, doing mechanical work out in their garden, growing good food to nourish themselves. And the sun is great to a point. We all need it. We need it to touch our skin and convert vitamin D into a form we can use from the type that we ingest in our foods. But too much sun, again, over a long period of time, can damage the skin. And I do spend a significant part of my days talking to people about skin cancer, biopsying little things. There are really two major forms of skin cancer. One is the kind that comes from chronic sun damage over a long period of time, and that's called squamous cell and basal cell cancers. There's another type of skin cancer that comes from the mole cells, the cells in our skin that give us pigment. If you have lots and lots of mole cells, you have darker skin. If you don't have very many, you have lighter skin. And those mole cells are also prone to damage from the sun, and that type of skin cancer is called melanoma. I always tell people that the squamous and basal cell cancers from chronic sun damage are really annoying, but rarely dangerous. However, melanoma, mole cancer, that can kill you. I tell people you should always use sunscreen anytime you go outside. Sunscreen will not prevent you from getting a tan. It won't prevent you from getting the positive parts of the sun, but it can prevent the chronic sun damage that you might pay for later in life.
What type of sunscreen do you suggest, Dr. Loomy?
I suggest one that you'll put on. That's the most important part, is actually putting it on. So anything that reduces your barrier to putting it on. If it's a spray because you don't want to smear stuff on you, if it's for kids, something that smells good, anything that you can put on, and anything that's SPF, which is sun protection factor 30 or more, is adequate. All sunscreens work by absorbing the dangerous rays of the sun instead of it getting into your skin. And then that material that's catching the dangerous rays of the sun breaks down. And that's a time-dependent thing. So all sunscreens should be reapplied at least every 90 to 120 minutes, hour and a half to 2 hours. Because after that time, they've broken down and aren't working anymore.
In the pool, too, I'm guessing, you need to have some water-resistant ones as well.
Yeah, especially for the kiddos. Mm-hmm. The most important damage to our skin comes in our youth when we run around like little Indians with having not much clothes on and lots of sun exposure. And that is really a key time. Get your kids to use sunscreen, however you can do it. Sometimes making a game of it. Can you cover all your skin? Did you miss a spot? That's real important. And again, using a water repellent sunscreen is great if you're going to be in water sports or playing in the pool or just outside running through the hose.
What do you like about working at the Richland Hospital?
People like Angie, actually. This is a wonderfully personable place to work. When I walk through the hospital, we have a program called Hi in the Hallway. When you pass someone, you say hi. It's part of our culture. And that fosters this kind of constant interaction, interdependence that reinforces that we knit together as a hospital staff to care for the people in our community. We are our own patients. The personal care that you get here at Richland Center is amazing. I've been a patient myself, and I can tell you I would much rather have a nurse that I know and recognize and trust than some random person who looks bored and uninterested and is there for a paycheck and can't wait to get out at the end of their shift.
Mm-hmm. As a patient, I think if you feel like you're a number, I'm not sure that's a productive thing either.
I'm not sure that's good for healing. I know Angie touched on about touch and about getting people that are interested in the human side of medicine, people like physical therapists and occupational therapists. Having touch just in and of itself is healing. And I think that in our high-tech world, we've lost the high touch that medicine can bring as part of the holistic healing process. Because we don't have to mend just bodies. Sometimes we need to mend spirits, minds, souls, because all of those interact together. Your body doesn't work outside of the context of your spirit, mind, and soul. All those things are one unit.
You have the new gastroscope. Are there some other things on the want list or the wish list?
Well, there are some other things that I would love to have. Sometimes we're limited by the additional folks that we have. So actually people is probably more what I'd love. I'd love to have someone who does ultrasound. I'd love to have someone who can offer certain services. So growing our own talent is so important. Physical tools are great, but not as important as skilled people to help me use them.
Well said. Angie, on down the road for the foundation here. I know you talked about the fundraiser in November as well coming up, right?
Yep. We have an Ask event in November that community members will be invited to donate to while asking for pledges to help us throughout the rest of, the next 3 to 5 years have some funds coming in that we know that will help purchase these equipments that Dr. Lumi uses and help us with the scholarships, and that only comes from community members. And so we have our Ask event in November. We have the mailings that go out to community members. We have our Legacy Giving program. Not too long ago, we just received a legacy gift from a community member. I'd like to give a shout out to Eva Schilling and her family. Eva was a volunteer at the hospital, saw all the great things that we were doing there, and she left us in her will. And so when she passed on, we received a nice gift from her, and that comes from people believing in what we're doing in our small town rural critical access hospital. So that's an option for people that if they maybe don't have anything right now to help out, they can help out through their legacy. And there's different ways that can be done as well. People give to us through their IRA. It's a tax deduction for them. They don't have to pay taxes on it. We don't pay taxes on it because we are a nonprofit organization. So 100% of donations that come in go towards our mission. I'm an employee of the Richland Hospital and Clinic, so my salary and benefits do not come out of donor funds. It's strictly funds that come in through our Ask event, our golf event, stay right here, and that's done through, again, donations at the end of the year, through our Ask event in November, and through legacy giving and grants. Grant is a big one, and again, we're grateful for Grace to be able to fund this particular piece of equipment because I didn't have it in my budget this year to purchase it for the surgery department, and it was a need they had. And when they came to us and asked for it, I thought, what a great way for us to have this partnership with Grace. So we're grateful for that we're all just working together. So the best way to donate to the foundation is you can just give me a call and I can talk to you about all the ways that you can do it. And it's a tax write-off for you, so you don't have to pay taxes on it. And again, we have our legacy program and an IRA. If some people at 70 and a half have to take out so much out of their IRA, well, instead of it becoming income for them, they can donate it to the foundation and they can write it off and not pay taxes on it, and we can use it right here in our community. So I encourage people, if any of this hits home for you, to contact me. I'd love to talk to you, about the programming we have, and again, just keeping rural healthcare active and giving the tools like Dr. Lumi needs to continue with cancer care and beyond what else is out there.
This year's Grace is coming up on August 8th, I believe it is, right in that area. Yeah, August 8th. And so they're raising money. We're going to have our radio auction the final week of July and first day of August, so people give generously there too. Grace does a lot for our community.
Yep, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah. Dr. Lumi, fascinating information today. Before I went on, I read your bio, and I was amazed to see that you root for the Vikings and the Packers. So
I do.
How is that possible? I don't know about that.
Hey, you cheer for your division.
Yeah, that's what I say, but I mean, I kind of draw the line there with the Vikings.
I don't know. I do have to say, I'm a Minnesota girl. My parents are both from Wisconsin. My dad's from the Driftless. My mom's from Milwaukee. So I cheer for both. But, if the Vikings play the Packers, I bleed purple.
All right, we'll forgive you on that. Thanks for your expertise today. It's been a pleasure having you on the air here.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's just been a delight.
Dr. Krista Lumi joining us, and also joining us Angie Coonan from the Richland Hospital Foundation on today's morning show.